Tonight, the truth about relationships. Are men and women really that different? Are we supposed to be together forever? And is marriage dead? When you're in love, the world is a rose-tinted wonderland. Your partner's the most beautiful, smart, compassionate, brilliant person you've ever met. It's like being under the influence of an incredibly powerful, mind-bending hallucinogenic. But the effect of love, like any drug, eventually fades, and what you're left with is something we like to call a relationship.
On the internet. We met on the internet. Fell in love pretty much straight away.
I had gone and had some glamour shots done, and they made me look like the fattest, ugliest Marilyn Monroe I had ever seen in my life.
And you paid for those?
And I paid for them, yes. And I said to him afterwards, when you saw the pictures of me, were you thinking, oh yeah, I'd do her? And he goes, no, I was thinking, she'll make a really nice friend.
It's a really long story, but anyway, I met my husband. Well, actually, he saw me in photos or something and basically said that he wanted to meet me. So it was very romantic. Yeah.
Part of the reason I think a lot of us struggle to make relationships work over the longer term is that we're fed this absolute nonsense from everywhere that your relationship is supposed to be the most fulfilling, amazing, exciting, amazing thing ever, and if it isn't, there's something wrong with you. You know, it's all supposed to be deeply rewarding and fulfilling all the time and exciting and surprise them with crazy stuff and, like, you know, violins in the garden and stuff like that. I forgot my wife's birthday twice. Second time, she was 4 months pregnant with our first child. I know. I said, why are you so angry at me? I haven't done anything. We're still together. It worked out fine. Most people's relationships become two people in a house who share a duty roster and, like, a list of things to do. Like, that's what relationships become, particularly if you have kids. If you have kids, then you absolutely reach the point where you are flatmates. Like, that's what you are, because you're knackered, and it really is just about, have we got milk? No, you didn't tell me to get milk. Well, I shouldn't have to tell you. You should look in the fridge. I know I should look in the fridge, but, like, if you're home and I'm not, and you do ring me and I say I'm coming home, I would look in the fridge. Well, it's not my job to look in the fridge. And that's what you become. You become these slightly bickering flatmates. The trouble is that reality often seems at odds with what we see every day in movies and television. They constantly blitz us with stories and images, reinforcing the idea that real love conquers all. It's easy to get the idea that our own relationships are inadequate, and perhaps we might be better off finding someone new. You don't want to, but you probably think, oh, I should, you know, what if I just go out and find this, and we get all excitement and new stuff, oh, I'll be sweet, and we'll be like shagging on the carpet and the kitchen table, brilliant. But the thing is this, you can replace your existing flatmate with a new flatmate. Like, you might say, my current flatmate has a number of annoying habits that I don't like, therefore I shall replace him or her. You get a new flatmate in. They don't tell you about their craziness on the way in. Like, you only find that out over time. When they first present, they might seem quite charming and fun. I remember having a flatmate once. She seemed perfectly lovely, and she was great, and she could cook with all this love. She was great, she was brilliant. We got her in. It was all going quite well until, like, about the third night, as we're all sitting there watching telly, she starts picking the stuff from between her toes and eating it. I know! Which is an image that's quite hard to get out of your head. As she's cooking dinner when it's her turn. This idea that if we just trade in the slightly annoying flatmate, or the flatmate that's always on at me about this or won't do that, for another one, and they'll just be a really good flatmate, it's not like that. Nevertheless, it seems the grass often does look greener, even if only temporarily. Being attracted to someone other than your partner from time to time is quite normal, and it doesn't necessarily mean there's something wrong with you or your relationship. However, people with successful relationships don't trade partners every time they meet someone they like.
Did I miss anything?
No.
Oh, hola, Mrs. Whitmans. I commence now to trim head. Will this disturb you and Senorita Tyler?
I'm good to go.
Oh, just a minute. Commence away.
Who's this?
This is Flavio, our gardener.
Gardener? Since when could we afford a gardener?
Oh, he's very reasonable. All the girls in the book club use him.
You want to put some clothes on, will you?
You're jealous?
Rubbish.
Well, there's no need to be. There's a Mrs. Flavio.
Oh, what? His mum?
No. His wife. He's married. Oh, here she is now.
Rolling down the highway, watching the sun go down. Waiting for the moment all the pretty girls come out.
Larry!
Yes, love.
Perhaps you're right. Maybe we can't really afford gardeners.
No. We'll find a way, love.
Although sex is undoubtedly hardwired into our genes, we've always been in two minds about it. Social attitudes towards sex have swung wildly between no-holds-barred hedonism and pious abstinence. Indian writers and philosophers pioneered the use of sex education and were the first to treat sex like a science, while American serial king John Kellogg thought sex was wrong even in marriage.
Dirty.
And invented cornflakes to curb carnal desires. People have always looked for interesting and unusual places to do it. In 1934, robbers Bonnie and Clyde made love in a vault, accidentally inventing the sperm bank in the process. The search for sexual variety reached a new peak in 2008. Having exhausted all other sexual fetishes, people decided vampires are sexy. There's all sorts of advice and things out there about how to keep a relationship interesting. It does get a bit sort of quiet on the bedroom front. There are a number of books that can be quite useful in this regard. This is one that I stumbled across. It's called Make Your Own Sex Toys. And it shows how with a few simple implements that you can find around any home, you can transform most relationships. This one is called the Fruity Scoopy. I'm not going to make it. I will say this, though. You can absolutely guarantee that when this particular episode goes to air, the next morning in supermarkets there'll be this... there'll be this rush on melons. All these sort of slightly filthy old blokes. Anything else, Sil? No, just these 25 melons, thanks. So what is this thing called love? Well, let's look at the science. Scientists have discovered that there are three distinct stages of love. Lust, attraction and attachment, all controlled by hormones. Lust, interestingly enough, also one of the 7 deadly sins. Love is driven by the sex hormones testosterone and estrogen. Lust is what gets us out there on the pull. Attraction. This is the love-struck phase. We can't eat, can't sleep and can't concentrate. Tragic, really. During this stage, our brains are all loved up with new chemicals which make us feel good. However, after a while, we build up a tolerance to these substances, and that leads us to the third stage, attachment. Attachment is the bond which keeps couples together long-term when the lust and attraction chemicals have returned to normal. Falling in love sounds complicated. Maybe not. A surprising study in America discovered the process may be a lot easier than you think. For those people who aren't sort of in love at the moment, who think, I quite like to be, turns out there are 3 quite simple steps for how you can get someone to fall in love with you, right? If you're at home, get a bit of pen and paper, write these down, right? First step, find a complete stranger. Probably not hard if you're not in love. Most people to you are strangers. Spend 45 minutes revealing your intimate secrets to each other, right? Just sitting there, revealing your secrets to each other, right? Then stare deeply into each other's eyes for 4 minutes. If you do that, then statistically, you've got a much greater chance of those 2 people coming out the other end of it feeling quite close to each other and connected than people have just sort of randomly chatted for about the last hour. One really important thing, you must actually ask them if they want to do this. That's the theory, but could it really be that simple? We decided to put it to a slightly unscientific test. Meet Tristan Avery, a 28-year-old project manager from Auckland. Tristan's hobbies include motocross and surfing. Rugen de Bray is 25 years old and has just returned from her OE. Rugen's interests include acting, photography and eating delicious food.
Hello,
Hi, how are you? I'm Tristan.
I'm Rugen.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
All right, guys, it's quite simple. What I'd like you to do is spend the next 45 minutes just talking with each other and just sort of talking about intimate details about your life, really. Stuff like hopes, dreams, sort of aspirations, family things. So, 45 minutes, good luck.
Okay, do you want to start?
I went to Camp America.
I did that too.
I was a lifeguard down the waterfront.
So now I'm like, what do I do with my life?
Now, Tristan and Rugen are complete strangers. This is the first time they've met and they know absolutely nothing about each other.
Through background.
Yeah.
Oi. Oi, it's science. Phase 2. What we'd like you to do, now, very simple, now, just no longer talking, just looking into each other's eyes for 4 minutes. No talking. And your time starts now. All right, and stop. That's 4 minutes up. So that's the experiment. Now let's have a chat and see how the science worked out. So at the end of the experiment, how do you sort of feel about the whole thing?
It was very interesting because she had a lot of things in common with what I had. Then the eye thing at the end, it was sort of, you can see deeper into their soul, and she seemed like quite a kind person.
Yeah, I think, you know, if you were just put in a room and kind of chit-chatted here and there without the eye contact and not with substance in the chat, you wouldn't get the same thing. Like, I feel like I know him now. Yeah.
Both Rugen and Tristan reported feeling a definite bond, and 2 of the couples in the original American study actually ended up getting married, which just goes to show it's a lot easier getting into a relationship than making one last. I saw an interview once where Angelina Jolie was talking about how she makes breakfast every morning with Brad and all the kids, and it's this crazy circus of fun, good times, and they're making orange juice and flapjacks, and like she just made it sound like this grand, amazingly fun party every morning. And I'm sitting there, and for the first bit I'm thinking, man, my life sucks. Because breakfast at my house is me just threatening really little people all of the time. And like, so I'm looking at my life and I'm looking at her description of her life thinking, man, wouldn't it be great to be them? I later discovered they've got like a nanny for each child. So I think we'd all be a lot happier if we abandon that notion that for this phase in life, when you've got sort of families and all this stuff coming through, that it's going to be anything other than flatmates. Like, that's how it's supposed to be, because you don't have energy for going out and hiring a bunch of people to play violins. And to be honest, it would just really annoy my wife. Like, if I hired a bunch of violins, her first thing would be, well, how much did that cost? And it'd be, what? So what? You've got time to hire violins, but not to mow the lawn, so...
I think when they
they're too needy, when they're too clingy and they don't give you your space.
Snoring. Snoring, yes. One of my exes, he used to leave the toilet door open and he'd go to the toilet and he'd just rip off little bits of toilet paper and you just hear this toilet paper going. Choo, choo. That is so weird. I know, it's really weird.
If you're at home watching telly and your wife's on the phone, and the ads come on and she's been talking to folks and you mute the telly and she puts the phone down and you go, how are you folks? What you mean, this is for the benefit of the wives and partners in the... What he means when he says that is, are they alive? That's... That literally is all we mean. But wives and partners at this point will think that what we're actually asking is, can you give me a transcript of the entire conversation? So she rolls into that. You're cursing yourself because you stupidly sat in the chair where you can't see the telly from the corner of your eye, and you know you're about 1.5 minutes into the ad breaks, which on average are about 4 minutes. So you're counting out in your head about sort of the remaining time. And as it gets closer and closer to when you think your program's about to come back on again, you start to then think, right, when was the last time we had an argument about me not listening? Like, if it was a reasonable amount of time ago, you chance that glance. You go, like that. As soon as you look back, you know if you're in trouble or not. The single greatest invention, the technological advancement that I think has saved more marriages than any amount of marriage counsellors and self-help books about how to improve your relationship, is live pause. Because that's when you say to her, excuse me, my dear, I'm just going to stop the television because I care more about you than it. We probably have about 30% less arguments in our house because of live pause. It's bloody marvellous. Arguments are an inevitable part of relationships. No matter what they say, everyone has them. Two different people are never going to agree on everything. But the important thing about disagreements is how you deal with them. If you're going to be in a relationship long term, one of the key things you need to be able to do is find a way to get out of fights. Because you know how you start an argument about something serious and it just descends into rubbish? Like it's about, you're both going around and around, bringing up stuff from 6 months ago and 8 months ago, and oh, you said and he said and she said. And like, you know, you just dug into this big fat hole and you can't remember what started it. You both think you're right. There's no way out of it. You need a kind of a circuit breaker to do that. Circuit breaker would also work sort of... You need a way to do it. When we first got married, we would fight a lot, as you do. You know, it was always her fault, but I didn't pick bones about it. So what we would do when we found ourselves in these stupid fights is that we had this cat, Monty, right? This is, you know how you have the pet before children? And when we'd end up on these ridiculous, just stupid fights, one of us would just pick up the cat and go there and say, look, this is the happy cat. If you take the cat, it means you agree that we just move on and that's it. And the rule was you couldn't take the happy cat unless you had actually agreed to the contract of moving on. And it just sounds completely stupid, but it worked. Sadly, the cat was run over. Now the fights go on for weeks. I tried dragging a skeleton in, but that was just... Here's the happy cat. Oh, hang on.
When you first together, like honeymoon, it's more like volcano, just boom, and then become like a little stream, going very slowly.
We're more in love than we've ever been before now, and we've been married for 10 years.
We're so much in love that we often talk to each other about what happens if one of us dies and the other one's left here. He said one day, well, screw it, we'll just get in a bad car accident together and go together. We don't have to worry about being here alone.
Not this week.
Not this week, no. I've got too many things to do.
What are the 3 things that actually best predict relationship success? Because if you're looking at sort of love and relationships, what are the things that best predict it? And they're quite simple and they make a lot of sense. If you're agreeable, if you're conscientious, and if you're emotionally stable. And like if you think about that, that makes sense. Because if you're agreeable, like if you're a fairly easy to get on with person, and if you're conscientious, like all relationships get to the point where the thing that actually makes long-term relationships survive, one of them is conscientiousness. It's like, do you just drop the socks on the floor, or do you put them in the laundry basket? You know, do you fold the bath mat the way that she wants you to fold it? And if you're emotionally stable, you're also more likely to succeed in relationships. If you're not, less likely to. And in fact, what's quite encouraging, if you are in a relationship with someone who's actually really negative and miserable and just really unpleasant to be around, the science says that people with that sort of personality, they actually don't live as long as positive people. So my advice to people who are stuck in those relationships, and as relationship advice, is just wait. So to sum up, have realistic expectations about relationships. It can't all be bread and roses. Don't be surprised when the euphoric effects of lust fade and you end up as flatmates. It's just part of the process. It's normal to have arguments, but be ready to admit when you're wrong, especially if you're the man, because that's usually the only way out. Remember the 3 keys to relationship success: being agreeable, conscientious and emotionally stable. And finally, relationships are meant to be fun, otherwise we'd all be single and happy. So that's it. Good night and good luck.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.